Hello, BookTube. I'm doing the Has Steve Read It tag. This was created by Matthew over at Mayberry Book Club. Excellent channel. And quite a tag. I almost didn't do it. I shop for books quite a bit with Steve Donahue, from the channel of the same name, and spent many late evenings talking about books. So he's told me about plenty of books he hasn't read. So I thought this would be a rather unfair tag for me to do. But the more I thought about it, if I try to be as fair as I can and not pick anything he's told me that he hasn't read. And he'll call me out if he's told me that he hasn't read it. So I was pretty careful. I put a few back, took everything just off the shelves in the house. I think the record is 4 that someone set of books he hasn't read. But like I say, he's told me about plenty of books he hasn't read. I tried not to get too esoteric, too local. I could go up to my Vermont shelves and probably just pull 8 off he hasn't read, nor had much reason to read. So I hope I've been fair here in what I pick. Like I said, Steve will let me know if I haven't. And I've tried to pick stuff that is available, but not, New York Times bestseller list. That's not of little use either. And a part of the goal is just to bring books to everyone's attention that I think are good, that I enjoy, and maybe get them some new readership. So first thing here, and there's been many editions of this book. This is Travels in Egypt and Nubia, Giovanni Battista Belzoni. Those of you who've studied archaeology, he's sort of a foundation figure for Egyptology. Strong man, a circus strongman, strange upbringing in England, had a knack for finding antiquities in Egypt, which, there's a lot of them you can't miss, obviously, the Great Pyramids and stuff. But he had a knack, and he lived in a time when getting there and traveling there and all that was half the battle. So this one is a White Star Publishers. They're classifying it as travel. There's Belzoni, quite a figure. This one is 2007, but like I say, this thing's been reprinted a million times. This one has some images. And it's a hardback thing, nice volume. So let me see here. In his diary, Giovanni Battista Belzoni, 1778 to 1823, wrote about his bizarre life. His childhood in his father's barbershop in Padua, his youth as an actor in Rome and England, so I got the England part too early, but he was in England. And his mature years spent exploring Egypt's ancient treasures at a time when they were still intact, buried in the sands. Belzoni's own account of his amazing adventures, which brought him into the Temple of Abu Simbel, the Pyramid of Chephren, and the tomb of Seti I, shed light on a man often neglected in the history of Egyptology. I don't know how true neglect it is. Introductory courses in just archaeology in general in college, then Egyptology and all this stuff. You read about this guy. You read excerpts from this book. So that may be overstating the case a bit. It sort of reminds me a lot of John Lloyd Stevens, who gets connected with the Maya stuff, but did a lot of traveling in Egypt and Greece and Rome and all that in the early part of the 19th century. And his books are always in print too, and so I can't say that he's neglected. The next one here, this is probably going out on a limb even more. This is Kenneth Clark, Another Part of the Wood, a self-portrait. A lot of you will remember him as the host of Civilization. He also, well, this one has the Harper and Row business card of the guy who was presumably sending it to somebody. This is a memoir. Clark did the Civilization, but he also did, this is 1974, he also is responsible for spiriting away a lot of the artwork from museums in London and getting it put underground. That's a story oft told about him. He did a lot of work on Ruskin. So that's where this is risky, because I know Steve is into Ruskin, whether he bothered with this particular book. I'm sure he's read Kenneth Clark's other books. So, if you excuse me, the washing machine's going. That's one of my chores. I don't even know if you can hear it, but it's one of my chores in the daytime here when I have a day off. So that was Kenneth Clark, another part of the wood. The next one here is again a subject I know that Steve's read plenty about. This is a very good book. The Dead Sea Scrolls and the First Christians, Essays and Translation by Robert Eisenman, who was involved in breaking open the monopoly on the Dead Sea Scrolls that scholars held for so long. And this is it. Nice volume here. Element book. This is, let's see, this came out in 1996. Get you some illustrations here. So a collection of scholarly essays, and like I say, really interesting volume. You could build a library on the Dead Sea Scroll Library easily. This next one I had to do just because I have a sense of humor. I am a huge fan of Roberto Picasso, and let me be diplomatic here, Steve is less so. So I know that a lot of Picasso's bigger name volumes, I know Steve has read them. Marriage of Cadmus and Harmony, that type of stuff. Maybe Cobb, maybe, Kay, a lot of those. I really like his stuff. This here is the 49 Steps by Roberto Picasso. It is translated by John Shepley, University of Minnesota Press, Minneapolis, and this came out in 1991. Adelphi did the edition, which is the publishing house in Italy that Picasso heads up. And this Minnesota one is from 2001. 49 Steps refers to the Talmudic doctrine that there are 49 steps to meaning in every passage of the Torah. Employing this interpretive approach, Picasso offers a secret history of European literature and philosophy in the wake of Nietzsche, Marx, and Freud. Picasso analyzes how figures ranging from Gustave Flaubert, Gottfried Benn, Karl Kraus, Martin Heidegger, Walter Benjamin, Franz Kafka, Bertolt Brecht, and Theodor Adorno have contributed to or been emblematic of the current state of Western thought. So, he probably read it, but I had to give it a shot just to mess with it a little bit. Then this next one, I'm pretty sure he's probably read Robert Kraft books on Stravinsky. But this is a Robert Kraft book on, it's his memoirs, and it deals with a lot of the big name, you've seen it on this channel before, a lot of the big name folks in the arts from the time period. This is, Robert Kraft worked as, it was a composer, a conductor, but he was also the personal secretary for Stravinsky. Came very close with both Stravinskys, and this is Yale University Press, 2002. So this is risky because I think Steve gets everything from Yale University Press. So this is a memoir, and for 20th century arts, really, it's very hard to beat. It's just fantastic. See if I can use some good photos here. And it's a story of his life, and he passed away a few years ago, but I always enjoyed his stuff. Now, because my background is in archaeology to some extent, um, I thought I'd throw in one more title. This was readily available, but I don't know if it was heavily read. So this one he may call me on and say, well, that's not really fair. But it was a very important archaeologist. It was a book that was available. Obviously, I have one. But I may be pushing the envelope a little on this. So stand by to get called out. But this is Accidental Archaeologist, the memoirs of Jesse D. Jennings. Any of you that are into American archaeology, North American archaeology, will know him for sure. This was, again, let me see here. This is University of Utah Press. Nice image of him there. So you have him as a younger fellow there and then a little older. His textbooks were standard when I was in undergrad. So few archaeologists have had as great an impact on American archaeology as Jesse Jennings. A founder of Great Basin Archaeology, professor of anthropology for more than 40 years, founder and director of Utah Museum of Natural History, director of the Glen Canyon Salvage Team, and such famous excavations as Danger, Hogup, and Cowboy Caves, Jesse Jennings is a legend in the archaeological profession. And that was true. That's very true. Opinionated, rough-edged, direct, and insightful. That sounds familiar. Jennings takes readers from his youth in New Mexico, Baptist College, to graduate school in the University of Chicago in the 30s, early professional postings in the Southeast, the war years, work on the plains, and then on and on. Really, if you're into American archaeology, this guy, well, any kind of archaeology, you can read it. It's an adventure story of well worth having. And you really, because of the time that he worked, he helped establish, I think of him and Gordon Wiley, and Kidder was a little earlier. These people were there, well, it may not have been that much earlier. Got to be in on the ground floor, so to speak, of a lot of that American archaeology. So a wonderful book. If you should be able to find it pretty easy, I would think. Then I had to go nautical, again risky. Well, all of it's risky unless I threw out self-help books and cookbooks. Steve's a huge fan of Patrick O'Brien. I'm sure he's read the Hornblower novels, every one of them, way more than once. I think he probably has read these, but I had to take a chance that maybe they slipped by or he just wasn't interested, but I can't imagine that being true. This is By Force of Arms by James L. Nelson. It's the first volume. Here it says trilogy, but it wasn't a trilogy. It ended up going on for a while, of the Revolution at Sea. And he's a good historian. He's done things on Benedict Arnold, George Washington's Navy, that sort of thing, Battle of Lake Champlain. So he's a wonderful writer who spent time at sea, so he knows his stuff. He did get a little bit of a blurb from Patrick O'Brien early in his career, which didn't help it, didn't hurt anything. Well before Revere Road, seagoing American merchants were striking their first blows for independence. Drawn by the passion of the almighty dollar, none struck more deftly than Isaac Biddlecombe, captain of the Judea, whose smuggling activities made a mockery of His Majesty's Royal Navy. So, good, exciting sea adventures. So even if Steve has read it, some of you across the pond maybe haven't seen this, that are into nautical fiction, they're wonderful. I have the first 5 of them. I really need to sit down and find out if there's more. And then this last one, 8, the 8th choice. So I'm hoping I got like 2. Who knows, right? I may just be blanked. But it's a 3-volume set. My guess is he did read the first one. And I'm hoping he didn't read the other 2. I don't even know how he would score this. He's the judge. He would have to decide. And that is John Richardson's Picasso. Supposedly there's a fourth volume coming out. I don't know if it'll ever get there. Mr. Richardson is even older than this Mr. Richardson. So we'll have to see. Masterful work. The details unbelievable. Richardson knew Picasso, which gives you some idea of his age. Has access to just everything. And these 3 volumes, the first volume I have is not in very good shape. Make sure there's nothing risque on there. So you have volume 1 here, which doesn't have a dust jacket and is a little beat up. And here's some of the images there. This is just an unbelievable work. Let me see here. This is, volume 1 is 1881 to 1906. These things are published by, let me get to the page here. This is published in 1991. And that's Random House. This one is, let's see, make sure I do them. This is 1907 to 1917. This one came out in 96. So there's a wait between each one of them, which you can understand. They're massive undertakings. And then the last one here is the Triumph years, 1917 to 1932. And that came out in 2007. So you see there's getting to be a little more time between each volume. There is a fourth, supposedly, excuse me, in the works. So we'll have to see. Steve, if you've only read 1 or 2, I expect partial points. So here's the tag. I had to jump in. Hopefully I played fair, and we'll see what kind of number I come out with, or if I'm going to get the Thanos snap or whatever it is. So thank you, BookTube.